So let's define some things, just to be sure that everybody's kind of on the same page with what these things mean, because I think sometimes we think we know what they mean, and we may not. Diversity is incorporating a variety of unique ideas, backgrounds, experiences, genders, ethnicities, all of those different things. But you have to remember that diversity does not equal inclusion. The fact that we have a lot of different people in this room does not mean that they're included. They're in a seat, but not necessarily included, right? Equity is giving fair access to resources and opportunities according to those individual needs that we talked about earlier. Everybody is unique, but equity does not mean equal. Example, this is a family example rather than a business example. But I have 4 children, and so when Christmas would come around, you have a choice. You can say, we're spending $200 on each kid. They all get $200, that's it. That's equal. We chose not to do that. We were equitable. We chose to say, this year, this kid is studying classical guitar, and he needs a new guitar. That means we're going to spend more money on him this year to meet his need. Not everybody's going to get that extra money, but he is. Next year, this kid's going off to college, and she needs a set of luggage. So she's going to get the extra money, right? And so when you needed it, you got what you needed when you needed it, whatever that dollar figure might be. That's equitable. You understand the difference in equal and equitable? Okay? And then inclusion means that everyone is invited to participate and they feel valued and respected. But inclusion doesn't equal belonging. You can sit at the table and I can ask your opinion. That doesn't mean automatically that you feel like you belong, that you're part of the group and you're wanted there, okay? Belonging is that place where everyone feels connected, has that relational trust, that number 2 on the flywheel, right? They feel free to show up as their authentic self. We're going to talk about authentic self here in just a moment. And they're an integral member of the group. They're wanted in the group. This is their place. These are their people. And all of those have to be true to create an inclusive culture. That fact of, I want to mention one thing about the authentic self. Sometimes we come out with, well, I show up as my authentic self. That means I can be whoever I want to, and you just have to accept me like I am. It doesn't mean you can be a jerk. It doesn't mean you can treat people any way you want to. There are etiquettes that belong in certain environments, right? The way I show up to the baseball game should not be the same way I show up to the boardroom. Those are 2 different environments. So I can be my authentic self in both of those places within the norms and etiquette of that culture that I'm in at that time, right? Brene Brown says that belonging doesn't require us to change who we are. It does require us to be who we are and to feel like we're accepted for who we are. People want us in the room because of who we are. That's the important piece. So when we start to look at the C.U.R.E mindset, again, connection, understanding, respect, and empathy, it is the cure for non-inclusive cultures. When we start incorporating these principles and this mindset into the way that we do things. So what is connection all about? It's intentionally pursuing those diverse relationships, making the connections that put you in proximity to learn from and understand people who are inherently different than you. So think about that. How inclusive are you? Right? How many people are you intentionally connecting with to build those relationships, right? I'm sorry, I don't want to trip myself here. It is building a community that reflects the diversity of our lives and shared experiences, looking around us. And sometimes we live in an area where there is particular cultural gaps. And that means you have to go outside of your normal environment to make those connections, and that's okay. That's something we actually want to do. It says, I want to belong. That's what connection is about. It's not networking, right? That's not a real connection. That's a superficial connection. We're talking about really getting to know somebody and understand them at a deeper level. It's that focus and views. Understand where they're coming from. Where did their ideas, what are their experiences? Why do they feel this way? Why do they believe this thing? What brought them to this conclusion? What were their experiences along the way? The question I want you to consider, and you can look at this on page 3 of your workbook, I want you to look at how connected are you to people that are different than you. So think for a minute and start to list in your head all the different groups that you can think of. So that might be socioeconomic, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, able-bodied, age, political opinions, profession, personality. Anybody think of any other ones that you would add to that? What other groups are out there that maybe you could connect to that you might not be connected to? I mean, that hits a lot of them, but anybody think of anything else? It's kind of like in that video at the beginning, right? There are those who are survivors, those who are not survivors. And by that we mean, these days it could be refugees, it could be cancer survivors, right? Lived experiences. And in our culture today, in some ways, people are pushing DEI to the side. But I think in some ways this is more important than it has ever been, because we are less tolerant of people that are different than us. You watch Facebook. I hope you're not one of those people that, they expressed a different political opinion than me. I'm not talking to them ever again. I know that inside families happens because somebody has a different viewpoint or a different experience. Instead of, let's understand each other. And it's okay to be different. It's okay to have some of these different ideas. I don't have to agree with you to connect with you, right? I don't have to agree with you we're going to talk about, you're going to hear me say that a whole bunch. So take a moment and look at this and ask yourself, which ones of these groups am I connected to? Which ones of these groups do I perhaps need to become more connected to? How many real relationships in these differing groups do you have? Remember, we're not talking about Facebook, not social media connections, real people, real face-to-face interactions where you sit down and you talk with these people and try to understand where they're coming from. So take a moment and jot that down. Do you actually seek out these relationships intentionally? As you're thinking about that, one of the places that we see this is the age group. Most organizations have 5 different generations working in their organization at the same time. Anything from 16 to 75 years old. And each one of those, we have the millennials and the Gen Zs and the baby boomers and the greatest generation and the silent generation. And they all have different experiences that have caused them to work in a certain way, right? To think a certain way, or to not want to work a certain way. But again, we have to look at what causes millennials to think the way that they think, right? What causes baby boomers to think the way that they think? Well, they grew up during the civil rights movement, so advocacy and those personal individualism and that kind of thing are really important to baby boomers, where millennials grew up in the digital age and social media, and so they're thinking differently. They've watched their parents be double income families who work 70 hours a week, and they're like, I don't want that. I want a tiny house. I want to travel the world. I don't want to be stuck at work all the time, right? And so their experiences cause them to be different. That's true of every group up here. We want to just slam the group and go, millennials, you can't work with them. Instead of trying to understand, well, where do they have this attitude and how do I tap into that as an asset to my company instead of something that's not helpful. Same with varying ability levels, political opinions, professions, all the different sectors have different things. Personality is one that we kind of throw aside. Allie is in the same thing, does a lot of the same kind of work that I do, and she can tell you the same thing. Different personalities, it's that focus and views. Some personalities are right-hand mirrors, and some personalities are left-hand mirrors, and they don't see the same thing at all. But we have to learn to work together and use those as assets and not points of contention, okay?
My sister was similar to
And then the second piece is understanding. So once we connect with somebody, we have to seek to understand them. And that's intellectual understanding gained by active listening. Active listening, right? Not talking, listening. It's a growth mindset that says, I get you. I understand where you're coming from. And it's where we want to be interested before we are interesting, right? I want to be interested in what you have to say, what your experiences are, before I tell you all about me and my experiences. Think about a team where it's a fast-paced, maybe a fast-paced tech company, okay? And in that company, the product development team is just really struggling. Everybody's frustrated. They're missing goals. They're kind of behind on some things. And the leader is really struggling with all that happening. And there's increased tension and frustration within the team. And so during brainstorming sessions, the extroverts, the extroverted thinkers, external processors kind of dominate the room because they're thinking out loud, they're giving quick answers, they love feeding off of each other. And the internal processors are quiet and they're not saying much. So in one of those meetings, the leader steps up and says, Shania, what do you think about this? And Shania gives a very vulnerable answer and says, well, honestly, I do my best work if I've had time to go back and reflect on it. I need time to kind of process it, and then I can give you an answer. I don't know what I would say right now. So the team leader took that to heart as other heads were nodding around the room, right? And the next time before they started meetings, they started sending out an agenda that said, here's the topics we're going to talk about. In the following meetings, those internal processors, reflective thinkers, had time to process what was going to be discussed, started bringing their ideas to the table, they were ready to discuss them, and the team began to make better, faster decisions because they included a different group of people in the room with one simple little act. They started hitting their targets, the collaboration improved, and the team performance went up. So that understanding how your people think and work and what their experiences are is huge to getting the best out of everybody on the team. And this concept of being interested before being interesting. Again, those of us who are external processors, I am one of those people. I thought in, head, out, mouth. Sometimes I wish I could rewind history and go, ooh, that shouldn't have come out. Right? I'm not that careful thinker that's like, well, I'm not going to say that because I want to think through. Is that a smart thing to say right now? You know, think about that commercial with the guy that's barking at everybody in the team meeting. Have you seen that commercial? It's a very obnoxious commercial. But he's that external processor that goes, oh, I shouldn't have said that. That was really dumb. Barking at your boss is a bad idea, right? And so we want to be interested in others before we tell our stories. I want to jump in and tell you all about me, not because it really isn't because I'm self-focused. I want to connect with you, and I connect with you through my stories. That's how I connect with you. But I have to learn to, like, it's not my turn. Let me hear about you. Tell me about your kids. What is your job? What are your kids doing? How old are they? You know, asking questions. Oh, really? What brought you to that conclusion? You know, ask questions and then be interesting. Then think, oh, I had a similar experience to that. Or, boy, I've never experienced that before, right? So you're interested in what others are doing, what their life experiences are before you're talking about yourself. How many of you are that external processor that likes to be interesting first? Yeah, we call it the boomerang effect. Everything comes back to being about me. And again, it's when I'm unintentional, it feels like everything's about me and I'm just very self-centered and I'm trying to one-up your story all the time. And that's not my goal. My goal is, I have something that connects with that. Let me connect with you. But I have to realize what it feels like to be on the other side of me when I behave like that, right? And be interested in you first. Okay, don't want to belabor that. So as we look at listening, let's take this listening audit. It's in your notebook there. I don't know what page we're on.
Page 5.
Yep, page 5. Okay, so in this, as you answer each of these questions, you're going to say 1 through 10. Rate yourself 1 through 10. 1 is, I am a disaster at this. 5 is, average. And 10 is, I'm a legend. I've got this one, okay? So how good are you at taking the time to listen to understand? Not listen to respond, but listen to understand the other person. Well, what did you mean by that? Tell me more about that, right? Rate yourself 1 to 10. How good are you at asking open-ended questions that draw out what other people are really trying to say? How good are you at that? Number 3, how good are you at summarizing what they said to check that it's right? You actually understood what they meant. How good are you at using body language to express your interest, to show your interest, eye contact, smiles, all those kinds of things? How good are you at resisting the urge to jump in based on assumed understanding, finish people's sentences for them, and respond instead of really listening? Okay? I'm going to give you about 1 minute, 2 minutes to just turn to your neighbor and talk to them about where do you see your biggest growth opportunity in those things. Discuss that we have. Let's move on to the next one. So hopefully you all see some areas that, yeah, I'm pretty good at that, but I need to work over here. The R is for respect, and this is professionalism, right? It's being yourself and accepting others as they are. So it is showing up as your authentic self and allowing others to show up as their authentic self too. It's being humble consideration to the other person. That, again, I'm being interested in you, I'm showing you respect and considering what you have to say. You can validate someone without agreeing with them, right? And I think that's something we're losing in our culture. That I can validate you and your experiences and your feelings and what brought you to that conclusion, even if I don't agree with you, and I can be respectful in the way that I do it. So think about, what does respect mean to you? Because respect means something different to different people. Different personality types read respect different ethnicities experience respect differently. Meanings and manners of displaying respect vary in different cultures and and by culture, we're not always talking ethnicity, right? We're talking about different families, different areas of the country. My family's from the South, and my cousins all grew up in the South where you never call, and I kind of grew up with this too and taught our kids this, that you never call an adult by their first name as a young person. You just don't do that. Even as a young adult, it's Miss Laura or Mrs. Scheidhauer, but not just Laura. To me, that's really disrespectful. In other places in the country, that's not disrespectful at all. It's normal. It's just what you do, right? And so understanding what does respect mean to the different people in their world, and what matters to one person may be insignificant to another. In some cultures, looking someone in the eye is how I show respect. I'm gonna look you in the eye and I'm gonna talk to you person to person. In other cultures, looking you in the eye is aggressive, right? So who am I talking to, and how do I show respect? For some people that have earned their doctorate degree, their PhD, it's disrespectful not to acknowledge that achievement and call them, Dr. Smith. I know other people who have achieved their PhD that feel like that's pretentious. Oh, don't call me doctor, just call me Phil, right? So you have to know who you're talking to and what respect looks like for them in their culture, in the way that they grew up, and be willing to bend. It's not disrespectful. I can say what I want. No, be respectful of the other person. Let them be their authentic self and meet their need so they meet yours back. It creates the culture where everybody feels valued. They become an engaged employee, and you become like the best boss ever. Right? Because they know who I am, they care about who I am, they care about what I have to say, they value me, they've given me a safe place. I want to work for this guy. I'm an engaged employee. Did you know that 75% of people do not leave a job because of the job itself? They leave because of bad bosses. 75%. And 83% of people on your team, in your organization, do not feel valued. I'll let that sink in a minute. 83%. That's not all African Americans or Asians or Hispanics, that's everyone on your team. So there's more differences that we've got to create inclusive cultures to fix that problem, right?